am to be back with all of you. So, welcome to today's burst of innovation. Today, we're going to talk about something very important in the work process, in the collaboration process, in the innovation process, and that is brainstorming. And I'm going to talk a little bit about 4 signs or signals that you are going to have an ineffective brainstorm, and then, of course, how to get over them. And correct me if I'm wrong, put in the chat bar if you're on Zoom with me, how frustrating is it to go into a brainstorm, and whether that is a half an hour, 2 hours, a full day, a week, whatever it is, and not get the results that you're looking for, and knowing during the session that it's not quite working, that it's a little frustrating, knowing that you're not getting what you need out of it. And if you're not the leader, if you're the participant on the other side of that, that feeling of frustration that you are wasting your time, that's an hour that you could have spent doing something else that would have been more effective, that you could have gotten those emails out, that project done, that presentation done. So I want to make brainstorms the best possible use of your time to get to the most innovative ideas and the most meaningful solutions. So let me share my screen with you, and then we'll go from there. Because I want to share with you the 4 signals that it's not working, and of course, how to overcome that. Okay, let's get started. I want to get my chat bar because I see you guys lighten it up a little bit. So let me ask you a question before I go into the 4 signs you'll have a really ineffective brainstorm and how to fix it. I'm curious from all of you on Zoom, and if you're on LinkedIn or Facebook, or wherever, watching this live later, watching this live now or later, put your comments in the comment section, and I will go back and I will read them and respond. For those on Zoom, what are some of the signs that you think you're having an ineffective brainstorm, meaning you are not getting what you need out of the situation? Put that in 1 or 2 words into the chat bar. Okay, yes, that people are distracted and on their phones. Absolutely, right? A distracted team, a team that is lacking presence, is never going to get you the results you're looking for. That's true across everything. I'm so glad that you brought that up. People regurgitating the same ideas. Yes, another really important signal that something's not going right. All right, so let me build on these. Here are 4 signs that I've seen time and time again that you'll have an ineffective brainstorm session. So the first one is you have conversation hoarders that are leading the entire session. So who are the hoarders? These are the people that suck the air out of the room and drive the conversation. And they're the minority, not the majority in the room. Now, I know this because I am that person. I think out loud. I'm a total extrovert. I'm an overly confident sharer. I'm kind of a loud talker, right? I could suck all the energy to me and my ideas. So you're going to have an ineffective brainstorm session if you've got conversation hoarders, the extroverts, the quick thinkers, the loud talkers, the overly confident sharers, or a session where people are just talking over each other. So nobody's even respecting the other person's opinion. People are just jumping in on each other. Conversation hoarders, if that's what's leading your brainstorm, it's going to be an ineffective one. All right. The second sign that you'll have an ineffective brainstorm is the first effect. So here's what happens. And it's human nature. They've shown this time and time again. We tend to latch on to the first ideas, and then that leaves no room for new thinking. And what ends up happening is we iterate off the same ideas over and over again. So the first 3 that came up in the session are the 3 that we all kind of glom onto and keep iterating. Now, iterating can be a really good thing, but oftentimes in a brainstorm session in particular, we want a breadth of ideas. We want a range of ideas to go from before we start to hone them down and decide which ones are the right ones. But the first effect, if you're that type of group that latches on to the first 3 ideas, you're never going to get to all the other innovative ideas that could be possible. And oftentimes those first 3, sometimes they're great, but oftentimes they're the really close-in ones and not the innovative ones that you're looking for. All right, the third sign that you'll have an ineffective brainstorm is painful silence. Oh, how many of you have been there where you've been in that brainstorm session and the leader asks a question or, sparks a conversation, and then this is what you get in return. So awkward, right? Now, silence can be your friend. I'm going to talk about that in a minute. But most of the time, the reason you hit that wall of silence is because people are unprepared, right? They've come in cold. They don't know what they're discussing. So their brain hasn't even had the chance to percolate on and be ready for the conversation. So people are unprepared. Or, and I'm seeing this more so now than ever, it's a burnt out brainstorm. And what I mean by that is your people are burnt out. They're tired. They're exhausted. They're not in a mental place to have the conversation. They've got so many things going on in their brain, tasks and to-dos they have to do, that they're having a hard time engaging in this conversation. So that silence is often a lack of engagement and a lack of preparation. Okay, and finally, the fourth sign that you'll have an ineffective brainstorm session is that you have a no trust team. A team where people are afraid to speak up, where there's a fear of disagreement, even though disagreements are a really important part of innovation. There's no willingness to share, that meaning that people have ideas, but they're not sharing them in the group because they don't trust the situation, they don't trust the conversation, they don't trust anything's going to happen with the ideas. So they're not willing to share even though they have the ideas. Or there's a blind following of superiors, meaning that at the top of the hierarchy in the room, when they talk, right, whatever ideas they come up with, the rest of the group just goes, yep, yeah, let's go with that, right? Whatever, it's less group think and more hierarchy think. So these four signs are proof that you're going to have an ineffective brainstorm, and it's going to waste your time and their time, and you're probably going to end up with more frustration than not. You have conversation hoarders, right? Those few people that suck the air out of the room and drive the whole conversation, shutting down, by the way, all the other people and ideas that are in the room. Or you have the first effect where you're just latching on to the first three and then nothing new comes out. Or there's that silence because people are unprepared or they're not engaged. Or there's no trust. So nobody's speaking up. Nobody's having real, honest conversation and debate. And we're blindly following the few people that say something. So what I want to know from you is, put in the chat bar, of these, which ones do you see in your organization or with your teams? And maybe there's another that I haven't mentioned. Do you have hoarders? Do you have the first effect, the silence, the no trust? And hey, frankly, it could be all of them. But put that into the chat bar. Hoarders is coming up a lot already. Wow, that was fast. Yeah, so I'm going to share a fix for that with you. And a lot of that has to do with brainstorm design. And I'll share about that. A little bit of the silence. Yeah, that's the unprepared and burnt out, right? We're seeing a lot more of that now. No trust, no trust. Got it. Okay. All right. So you're seeing a lot of these. So let's talk about how to fix it. Let's talk about how to get over those four challenges that keep you from having an effective brainstorm. So the first one, for the conversation hoarders, there's a very simple fix for this, and that is to have dynamic exercises. We need exercises that are as dynamic as the people in the room. So we need exercises that are writing, right? So for the people who are more introverts or need more time to think things through, get sticky notes. My favorite thing in a brainstorm is sticky notes. Sticky notes, have people write it down and then debate the ideas, have some discussion, work together, work apart, individual, in groups, inside the room, outside the room. Here's the thing I see with brainstorms, it makes them really ineffective, and it allows conversation hoarders like me to take over. And that is that we have one way of brainstorming, and it's all about getting in a group, sitting around the table and talking. And that doesn't allow for the dynamic people that are in the room. We all have different everyday innovator styles. This little chart over here shows you some of the 9 different ways that we innovate as humans. And so we need exercises that are as dynamic as the people in the room. Writing, speaking, individual, put it down, put it on the wall, have a conversation. That's going to remove the focus on the conversation hoarders and allow everybody the opportunity to get their ideas and their thinking on the table, and do exercises in a way that actually work for them and their everyday innovator styles. All right. To overcome the first effect, right, where we just latch onto the first ideas, the key here is also dynamic, but varied exercises that force a different angle. We want exercises that look at the problem from the root of the problem. We want exercises that look at it as an opportunity. We want exercises that look at it from the customer perspective, the sales team perspective. If we look at the thing that we're brainstorming on from different angles, it'll force different ideas, and we won't have to latch on to the first ones. Now, there's a second part to this, which I put in italics because it's so important, which is we need to set an expectation of quantity over quality. So there was a photography class and a professor, and he had his class, and half of the class he judged on their grade was going to be based on quantity, meaning getting out there and experimenting all over the place. The other half of the class, their grade was based on quality, composition, lighting. I'm not a photographer, but you know what I'm saying. All the things that make the photograph like the perfect photograph. So one group in the class is focused on getting out there and experimenting and trying all these things. The other group is focused on getting that just right photo. Well, to no surprise, the group that was focused on quantity actually ended up having better composition, better photos than the ones focused on quality. So when I'm leading a brainstorm, I like to make sure at the front end to always say, hey, we're going for quantity first, we'll get to quality later. And that allows us the room to have a million different ideas, because that's what we want at the beginning, right? We want to go wide and then we want to narrow it down. If we start too narrow too soon, we end up like that side of the photography class that actually didn't have good photos. So to get over the first effect, right, we got to vary it up and we got to set the expectation of quantity. Okay, to get over painful silence, here's the thing. It's so simple. You ready for it? We just prep our people. We give them the tools to come to the meeting prepared. I love it when I'm invited to a session where someone says to me, hey, we're having this brainstorm session. Here's the challenge we're trying to solve. Here's some nuggets of inspiration. And if I get that 4 days before the session, wow, I come in with like guns blazing. Like I've got some ideas, I've got some thoughts, I'm excited. But if you put me into a session without any prep work at all, it's going to take me and the people that you're dealing with time to warm up to what it is. And that's why that silence happens. So prep people, give them a little one pager with a one question that's going to get them thinking a little bit. Hey, in the ideal world, how would this problem be solved for you? Right? Just get them thinking before they get to the meeting. And don't be afraid to give people thinking time in the session. I think sometimes we think that, especially if it's like an hour or 2 hours, that we've got to just fill the time with solutions. Well, yeah, but that thinking time is integral. We don't give ourselves enough thinking time across the board. So how great is it to come to a brainstorm session where there's 15 minutes where you get to just get the information, get the data, and then go think about it a little bit before you come back. That'll also, let's talk about, also help with the conversation hoarders being more dynamic as well. And then the last thing I'd say is, if you've prepped your people and they're engaged and you've given some thinking time, don't be afraid of silence. You can actually use that to your advantage. So we as humans, we like to fill the silence, and there's nothing wrong with that. So if your people are prepared and they're engaged and they've had some thinking time, that silence will get people to talk and get people to engage. When I used to run a lot of focus groups, I used to do a lot of focus group moderation. And one of the compliments I got from my client, which I'll never forget, I walked into the back room, that one-way mirror, they're all sitting there eating M&Ms, and I'd go back and say, anything else you want me to ask? Did we miss anything? One of the clients said to me, Tamara, I really love how if people don't have an answer right away, you don't keep talking. You just let the silence sink in, give people time to think, and then allow the conversation to happen. I thought that was great, because really what they were saying is, you're not afraid of the silence, because we as humans will fill it, but sometimes we need a little chance to do so. So a little bit of silence can actually work in your favor. All right, last but not least, with the no trust teams, here's a couple things. Number one is even the playing field. Sometimes that lack of trust comes from thinking your ideas don't matter because of the people in the room. So make sure if you've got your dynamic exercises and your varied exercises and you're working in groups, that you're breaking up people based on hierarchy and evening the playing field in a way that everybody can participate. Maybe do a trust exercise before you brainstorm. So sometimes it's helpful just, if you've got a 2-hour brainstorm, to spend 15 minutes just getting to know each other a little bit. Hey, what's one thing, my favorite question, what's one thing we'd be surprised to learn about you? A hobby, a passion. I learned a guy I interviewed the other day used to run a pawn shop. I would have never known that about him. How interesting is that? And how much more connected to him do I now feel knowing that about him? So don't be afraid to spend 15 minutes, not on your specific challenge or opportunity, but on just building trust first. It'll go a long, long way on the back end. Then I say the other two things I've learned in building that trust is one is laugh. So when people are in laughter, they're in discovery. What research has actually shown is that when we're having fun, when we're being playful, when we're laughing, it actually opens up our sense of connection. It opens up our willingness to be vulnerable, and it puts us in more of a mindset of discovery and curiosity. So laugh, have fun. Don't have to jump in and be all serious right away. And especially if there's a lack of trust, that laughter can actually help you build that trust. And finally, be vulnerable. I think part of the reason that teams have no trust, what I've seen, is that we're afraid to look stupid. We're afraid to look like we don't know our job. We're afraid to look like we don't know the answer. Why are we being paid? Why are we here? Does our opinion even matter? Don't be afraid to say, I don't know. Don't be afraid to share something vulnerable or a failure. What I have found is that when that first person does it, everybody else opens up, right? Everybody else starts to feel more connected, and we have more trust for each other if we're being vulnerable with each other. Research has shown this time and time again. Vulnerability creates psychological safety. All right, so let's go back for a second. So those 4 signs that you have ineffective are you've got conversation hoarders, those extroverts and talkers like me sucking up the meeting. You've got the first effect where you've got like ideas come out on the table immediately and then you're done, right? That's all you've got, and everybody latches onto those. You've got the unprepared and the lack of engagement that leads to the silence that's not good. And then you've got teams that don't trust. And what that ends up manifesting itself as is people being afraid to speak, fear of disagreement, of not having a willingness to share, even if they have the ideas, or blindly following the few people with ideas. The solution to that is number 1, dynamic exercises that speak to all the different types of everyday innovator styles, the introverts, the extroverts, thinking time, talking time, small group, large group, individual. The second is to get over the first effect, to have varied exercise that force different angles. And most importantly, I think of this is setting that expectation of quantity over quality. To overcome painful silence, we're going to prepare our people, give them a little conversation starter, a little nugget to help them think it through before they even get to the meeting. And then perhaps we're going to use silence to our advantage a little bit and not be afraid to allow people thinking time in the meeting. We are so desperate for thinking time right now that to give them that time, people will actually be very happy. They'll feel it's time well spent, believe me. And then if you've got some lacking of trust, even the playing field, build in some trust exercises, laugh, be vulnerable. Now, I think if you have a no trust team, there's some other issues that probably need to be resolved and some longer work that needs to happen, but you can at least start to overcome it in these meetings. Okay, so here is my question to you that I want you to put in the chat bar. Of all of this that we just talked about, and I hope you took a screen share of it. If you didn't, tell me, I'll put it back up. What are you going to work on this week? Which of those things, put in the chat bar in one word or one phrase, what's something that you can do to help build more effective brainstorms? Because again, I'm all about innovation happening everywhere and all the time. And there's also a time for us to come together and collaborate and build together. And brainstorms are one of the most effective ways to do that if they're done right. So we want to make sure that we're avoiding those traps. And when we see those signals, that we're actually actively working to overcome them, versus just leaving those brainstorm sessions frustrated, overwhelmed, disappointed that we're not getting the results from ourselves or from our team that we're looking for. And we definitely don't want our teams to walk away thinking that that was an absolute waste of time. And I hope I can decline and be busy for the next one. I can't tell you how many times I see that happen. All right, so we've got a couple in here that say build dynamic exercises. So I get the answers from more than 3 people. It is essential that we build brainstorm sessions and meetings that are as dynamic as the people in the room. And it's not hard. It's actually a very simple solve to just do a little bit solo, a little bit together, do all those different things. So, okay, so I don't know what happened there, Carolyn, with the chat. She said it looks like it's disabled. So put it in the Q&A if you want to as well. Very strange. I'll make sure that's fixed next time. I don't know. I don't even know how you do that. So I don't even know how that happened. So that's a technology fix I'm going to have to do later, but thank you for telling me. But Carolyn, put it in the Q&A. That's where everybody else is putting it right now. So what are you going to do this week? Okay, so Jessica says she's going to work on the trust part by adding in some personal conversation before. Yeah, never underestimate the importance of personal conversation. All right, everybody, thank you so much for joining me. I so appreciate being back with you. And I just want you to remember, innovation happens all the time and everywhere. And brainstorms can be a very powerful tool that help us collaborate, come together, and get buy-in for ideas because we're working together. And I think that buy-in is essential to creating traction and momentum. All right, everybody, so good to see you all. I will see you.